Welcome to the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As a leading manifestation advisor with a process that's, radically different from the old New Age model, mine is rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and my energetic gifts. I created this podcast to help you expand your subconscious limiting beliefs about the potential of deserving the manifestations you're calling in. Therefore, you're tuning into this podcast series to show your subconscious that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, you've already started the process of manifesting it. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us our review, comment, and share it with your fellow manifester that's struggling or could really benefit from the information that you're about to learn. Kicking off this episode with another My Magnetic Story. I've been wanting to say thank you for your amazing work for a while. Ever since I found your website, things in my life have changed. And just recently, I manifested the partner I've always wanted to call into my life. I can't even remember the time when I had a real relationship and how long it took me to unblock all the things that were holding me back. I did the reparenting workshop, and I've been listening to everything that you say and reading everything from you that I could get my hands on. I had my list for a partner for a long time, but then 2 months ago, in the midst of doing all of the work, it hit me, and I wrote down the most precise and clear list I've ever had. And not even 2 weeks later, after passing 2 very shiny tests, he appeared. It's everything I've ever wanted, and it was so easy, open, and clear. All of the fears I used to have disappeared. He ticks everything off my list and more, and being with someone's never felt so good. I can't believe this is all happening, but it is, and your work has gotten me there. I keep telling all of my friends about you so that they can have their own experiences. You're gold. Thank you so much for sharing all of this and making your work and wisdom available to so many people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really actually just want to highlight a couple of things that she wrote in this that are super important that I talk about a lot, but this actually depicts it well. Number one, she was redoing the work. That's a huge component of manifesting. That's why we created the pathway, is so that you can revisit over and over. It's like a gym membership. You can go back to old workshops when something new comes up. If it like a shadowy trigger comes up, you can head to the shadow workshop, flip-flop back into reparent. So I love that she highlights that. You do have to do the work. There was a point where I saw an IG message not long ago that was like, I did opulence once last year and I'm still in the same rock bottom. What gives? Redo it over and over and over again until you manifest what you want. You'll learn something new every time. It's going to open up your channeling abilities like it did for her, where she said, I got a ping to go write a new list. That's when the universe is pinging to be like, you need to give me the most updated core essence that you desire, because I have things orbiting around you and I need to see what to send through since you've been growing your worth so much doing this work. So that's a really huge thing that I want to highlight. And the last thing that is so important, when I used to work with clients about manifesting their partner, which was kind of my bread and butter for a really long time, I just had a huge knack for it, because it all comes down to don't settle. Be in your highest self-worth, pass your test, and expand, which is not what anything out there tells you to do. So I really want to highlight, they would always ask, well, how do I know that this is a test and it's not my person? She talks about how things are so effortless and easy and all of the fears have dissipated. I always use my hands and I go, it should feel like this when you manifest your person. And they easily slide and clasp together. There's no games. Yes, of course, your insecurities come up in your triggers, but you both are so present and patient and accepting of one another. So it should feel so simple and so flowy when it's the person. So I just wanted to highlight those. Stay tuned for the end of the episode, because I'm going to answer another supported question on manifestation. Today's guest, Nic Weinstein, founder of Homestead Apothecary in Oakland, has been kind and generous enough to extend to the community 15% off any product in store or online using the code MAGNETIC. That's capital MAGNETIC. And if I could recommend a couple of really solid products, though everything's amazing, and you're going to discover that in this episode, especially when you get into hearing about how they source from local farms. It's incredible. I absolutely love the High Priestess spray. The Psychic Bodyguard spray have been profoundly helpful. You've seen us rolling some of their herb smoke rolls here at the retreat house. And then they have one of the best Vitex on the planet to go ahead and stabilize hormones. So again, the code is magnetic, 15% off at checkout. Enjoy this episode. A few episodes back, you heard me speaking to founder of Blue Blocks, Andy Mant. And in the episode, I go over how I've healed my hormones through alleviating all non-native EMFs, as well as protecting myself from blue light in the evenings. I'm actually super opposed to talking about products on the podcast, but this is one that I think is completely instrumental, like I said on that podcast episode, especially to my female listeners for their hormone protection. I talk about how I've completely healed my hormones from doing the two things I stated above. And a huge component of that has been using Blue Blocks glasses, the red ones, the red lenses in the evening. So I do that as soon as the sun's setting. I throw them on. And in the day, I wear the yellow lenses that are kind of in the cool 50s retro Ray-Ban frames. And I'll also carry around, which I think are super chic, the clear lenses in my purse at all times. I do the really big aviator ones so that can also help protect me throughout the day, especially when I'm in front of the computer or I'm in front of, my screen. Otherwise, I'm without fail protected in the evening with the red light protection. Now, for you who are still questioning, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode. It's Andy Mant, founder of Blue Blocks. And these are the only blue light glasses that are backed by science that actually work. So that should be really reassuring. And they obviously, as I've suggested, have daytime and nighttime lenses. And what's really cool and actually held me back for a long time in Max is that they do prescription. You shoot them your prescription and they'll make you the prescription or non-prescription and readers, whichever you need. It's free shipping all around the world. And you can even send your own frames that you love of whatever glasses you have, and they'll add their lenses to it too. Again, please, to my women listeners, all of my listeners, but especially who are dealing with hormone issues, who are dealing with sleep issues, you will notice a difference immediately from using these. I would suggest even after a couple of days, which is what I noticed. Go ahead and use the code MAGNETIC, that's capital MAGNETIC, for 15% off at checkout. And that's Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX. And you can find those in our show notes below. Go heal your hormones. Welcome back to the Expanded Podcast. Today's guest is founder of, I would argue, quite a few people's favorite apothecary, because you guys have been around now for a few years. I'll let you get into that. But we have founder Nic Weinstein of the Homestead Apothecary out of Oakland, 2 locations. And he's also the beautiful fiance of one of my very close friends, Ashley Neese. So let's kick this off. I'm going to kick it off with the same question I ask everybody. Give us your cultural upbringing and background.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me, Lacy. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
I'm grateful.
So am I. So as far as my cultural background, I'm Jewish. I grew up I'm Reformed, so it was more of my culture than a religious practice, but I did go to Hebrew school and was confirmed.
Do you speak Hebrew?
I did, but I haven't used it, so I've lost most of it.
Oh.
I grew up in LA. I was born and raised here. And I am third generation here in Los Angeles.
Wow, that's unheard of.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual.
Amazing. And family background and all of that, what did your parents do? What was their whole deal?
My mom stayed at home with us, and she helped my dad a lot because my dad I'm actually also a third generation entrepreneur.
Oh, great.
And my dad owned a photo lab. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. It was.
Did he like before 1 hour photo?
Oh, it wasn't like that. It was like in the 80s and 90s, if you saw anything in black and white that was in print, my dad printed it.
Wow. What was the big one in Hollywood everybody used?
That was my dad.
Okay.
Photo Impact.
That's it. There you go. That's amazing. That space is beautiful.
Yeah. He's amazingly, he's one of the only labs left in Hollywood.
Still.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Because when digital came, it was like, imagine making cassette tapes and CDs came out, you're done.
Yeah.
You know, unless there's like some little special project that someone wanted to do. So when digital cameras came out and people were printing things at home, and then a lot of the larger studios were just using stock photography, the industry just collapsed.
Jeez.
So it's amazing that my dad, it's like really a testament to like all of the work that he's done over the years that he's still there.
Incredible. And he really is in the heart of where you should be, this or New York, if you want to do that. I mean, I think of that like in the printing world as well, you know, seeing all of these magazines fold and quarterlies, it's really heartbreaking. It is.
Because I grew up around this, I love print. I love tangible objects. I'm going to be turning 40 this year, so I think
Congrats.
thank you.
Everybody says it's the best. I can't wait.
I'm very excited about it. I think that just because I sort of just miss the digital age, there's something about like these objects that are really meaningful to me. So I enjoy all the technology, and also I'm sad that a lot of the print material is going away.
Absolutely. I want to pivot into preparing for a child because you guys just welcomed. How crazy is this, everybody listening? So Nic is a double Libra with a Sag rising, also an MG, right?
Yes.
Okay, great, MG. And then they welcomed their first son in October, who is also a double Libra and a Sag rising.
His Sag is his moon, so we're switched in just that place, which is very interesting.
Oh, wow.
But he's also double Libra Sagittarius.
I mean, incredible.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Philosopher, lover, I can see it all.
Yeah.
Tell us, because you guys went through an in-depth process of really preparing to bring this child, and it was incredibly conscious.
Yeah.
And I think that I like to ask people who have been through it, not, of course, like, you know, the people who are supporting us through those experiences, but I can remember Ashley, like, going to the incense place to get like the intentional incense. You know, you guys were amazing. And the books you read, tell us about the process and resources.
God, now that he's 6 months old, it feels so far away.
Doesn't it feel crazy, that wanting and that also intentional work? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we are probably two of the least likely people I can imagine to have a child. Neither of us were really sure up until kind of the last minute that we wanted to have a baby. And so I think where this process that you're describing started from was us really looking at why that was. And we each had our own experiences with that. And mine was that I had a really challenging childhood, and I was very scared that I would repeat some of the things that my parents did and not be a good father.
I think that's my biggest fear as well. One of my biggest blocks.
Yeah, it was definitely the biggest one. But then something happened. Every year I go to the GEM show.
Yeah.
And I went to the
Which one do you get? Arizona, right?
Yeah, and also the Denver one.
Okay.
On my birthday in September. So I went to the Denver GEM show, and I was staying with a friend's friend. And they had this little boy, and he was so wonderful. He was just so sweet and just so full of life. And they were having a really hard time. Let me put it that way with parenting him. Both of them were high a lot of the time that I was there, in a way where they weren't able to pay as much attention, and they were fighting. I remember that it was snowing outside, and they put him in a little thin tracksuit and sent him outside.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And then they gave him a cookie for breakfast, and then he got hyper, and they got really mad at him.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, and I was playing with him and really like engaged with him.
Like you are with Barley when you're here.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
And so there's this moment where I was like, I can do this.
Oh, great. I have something to offer here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after I left, I came home and I was talking with my partner at the time, and I said, I want to have a child. This is before I met Ashley. And she said, I don't want a child.
Wow.
And hers were like environmental reasons.
Yeah.
So that was one of the main reasons why we parted. So it was interesting that actually Ashley called me in after. That's another part of the story.
We have to talk about this story because I was there for all that. Yeah.
Well, what you weren't there for was my end, which was that I kept saying, I keep picking people who are a certain type of person. I keep picking the wrong fit for me. And so I said, you know what, this time I want someone to pick me. So it was really interesting that Ashley very intentionally picked me and came after me, which was a very new experience for me. And she was sure that she wanted to have a child as well. So then that leads me to us coming together and the process that we went through together instead of just my own process. So there's this book, I think Ashley told you about this, that's called Spirit Babies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been on that one for a long time. Yeah.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I think most of our listeners or people who engage with the blog for the last few years have been big readers of it as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, even if you don't ever want a child, that book is amazing.
It's amazing if you've ever been through an abortion.
Yes.
It helps you really understand from a spiritual perspective of why to forgive yourself and that don't worry if you do intend to have another child. That same child's most likely waiting for you.
Yes.
If you've been through miscarriages, it's incredibly therapeutic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful book. We were hoping to talk with him, but he's passed. So.
I know everybody. Yeah. So a little side note about Ashley is she's the queen of finding like the best of the best when it comes to healers and everything. And so I knew the moment that she read that she would seek out. And everybody who ends up finding that book is like, oh, we can't do a session with him.
You know what? I want to maybe we can segue into this at another point if this is of interest to you and the listeners. But what you just said struck me because that's very true of Ashley. And knowing that about her has really helped me with a lot of the self-worth issues that I've had for a long time.
We have to talk about that. So remember that.
Okay. Well, so going back around to us preparing. So the incense that you were referring to was called Isis, and it's a goddess Isis. And we got that at the Sword and the Rose in San Francisco, which if anyone's in the Bay Area or ever traveling to the Bay Area, it's such a special place. And you travel down this alleyway. It just literally, it has trash cans. There's flies right there. And then the light emerges.
Hobbitland.
And yes, it's like a whole situation back there. There's a beautiful herb garden. And then you go into this little, kind of like a hobbit hut. And it is so tiny. It's like the size of someone's bathroom. Yeah. And everything in there is so special. And they hand make all of their incense. And they've developed these recipes themselves. And the first time that we went in there, I use my intuition and I guess it's kinesiology to select things. And I picked the one that I was being called to. And they said, this is the, I can't even remember the name of it right now, but they said basically this is the oldest, it's like the beginning of life that you picked. And I was like, Ashley looks at me, she's like, of course you picked that one. And so then we got really hooked on this place. So we ended up going back when we were wanting to get pregnant. Yeah, so we started off with setting our intentions, having a lot of conversations, burning the incense during the conversations, trying to talk with each other and also with the baby, doing a lot of meditation, really trying to connect with that energy. What was really interesting that came up for me was that, I'll just put this out there right away for your community that I'm transgender. So one of the things that was really interesting that was happening to me is the spirit that I was originally communicating with was attached to me.
Wow.
And I had to have this conversation with that spirit to say, this is not the right thing for me to bring you through.
Wow. And how long ago was that when they first started communicating with you, that baby?
I guess it was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was a long process that was actually a little painful for me to just tell that to this spirit who had really been waiting to come through me.
And the grief that I imagine that could be tied up in that as well.
It wasn't grief on my side because I felt so clear about that. And I really kept communicating to that energy. If you want to come through and be with me, you're going to come through Ashley. Oh,
so you already knew Ashley at that point.
Yeah.
Wow. How special that is.
That's pretty neat.
Oh, I love that. And how sacred to be chosen too.
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful.
That also, being able to speak with that child was also powerful to know like someone wanted to come in.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And be with me.
Yeah.
So I think that was like, it was all these like almost tiny, but monumental layers of stepping into fatherhood and stepping into parenthood and stepping into my worth and stepping into this role. Hearing this spirit saying like, no, like really, like I remember them saying like, no, I want to come through you. Oh. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I really understand that, but that's not how this is going to happen in this life. Yeah. So I think that energy left.
You could feel when that dissipated.
I felt a disconnection there. And that's when I felt the grief. And just sad that I couldn't provide what this spirit wanted. And then I was able to talk with who I now know to be Solomon, because that opened up that space for that.
So it was Solomon?
The second child that I was talking with was definitely Solomon.
Wow.
So that was neat to be talking to him. And I think Ashley had a much stronger connection with him than I did, which makes total sense.
Had she been feeling him around her prior to this as well?
When I was talking to that first child, she kept getting, I don't know if she was getting frustrated, but she was like, well, I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, and she was okay. I just pulled it together where she was basically like kind of sad. And
she was like, why aren't they talking to me? But it wasn't our child. And that's what I realized.
So everyone during this process with Max and I, not to digress, but Max has had one around him and every healer sees it. And I remember getting bitter about that and being like, this is my experience, though it's ours, you know? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's interesting because that may be like his child that's not coming through this time.
Totally. It could be next in line. It could be the next life.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of that book as well, that I just want to point out, is it gives you the tools to navigate this stuff and to even open up and tap into this conversation. I think that's really special. And what he makes a really big point of in that book is how to let them know how to make the choices with it and how to be very clear and, say maybe now's not the best time and all of that. And so I love that. And you guys were reading other books as well.
Oh yeah. I've read a lot of books. This is something about Ashley and I. We're both book people. Mm-hmm. And so when we start a process or we get interested, even a tiny like little spark, it's like who else already has gone down this path? What books can I read? It's a big deal for us. So we've got probably a knee-high stack of books. She has a whole book just on the pelvis, that she was reading.
Amazing.
That's just, and I don't really think I've ever met anybody like that, or definitely haven't been in a relationship with anyone where it's like, okay, let's go find all the books that we need to read.
Totally.
And that's sort of like our first layer, of calling in help around whatever we're working on. And I read a really good book that I think the name of it is, Do Fathers Really Matter?
So beautiful and such an important question, because I don't know, our society doesn't support that very much.
Yes, definitely.
So please speak on that. It's so important.
I took a lot out of the book, but one of the things that's strongest in my memory now, after not having slept for a very long time, was that I think the book really communicated the patriarchy on a biological level to me. Mm-hmm. I'll explain that because that might not really make sense. So the thing that struck me the most is that the father's DNA, and I'm using these terms loosely, there's like just to for the sake of conversation and explaining this. So the father's DNA goes in and tells the child that's going to be born to extract as much from the mother as possible.
Wow. All the nutrients.
As much as possible.
Wow.
Because that man can go and have a child with someone else and extract as much as possible from that woman. Because the idea is that he wants his offspring to be as strong as possible.
The healthiest, right. Strongest.
But that's not what the woman's body wants. The woman's body is trying to regulate what the father's telling that child to do, so that she's preserving her own energy and her own resources, and also preserving resources to be able to have additional children. Mm-hmm. So we're doing this dance like at this very, very deep biological level for procreation, which is fascinating to me. And so I think about as much work as we need to do around gender equality, the fact that we've gotten to where we are when we're biologically designed to be doing this dance is kind of amazing to me.
It's incredible. And it also just lays out that true that true middle point of polarity.
Yes, yes.
I mean, that tension,
yes.
It really shows that.
And also for me, like what women are experiencing on this deep, deep level, that is real. That is like biologically happening.
Like whether anyone wants it to or
That's
not.
Right. Or if anyone wants to like, yes, we're all trying to like grow around that and transcend from that and all these pieces, but that is our like biological reality. And that's sort of like, to me, setting the stage for what we have to contend with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that we are becoming a conscious enough society, though a lot of people in this current climate are very fearful. We're not. I have a lot of hope that we are, to be able to reckon that, to be able to persevere through that. I think thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting and incredible.
Yeah, I feel a lot of hope around that too, because that's my life experience, is having that internal process.
Can we pivot into the transgender zone?
Sure.
Okay, good, because you're going to serve as a very, very, very big expander for many people in this
Thanks,
community.
Lacy.
If you could share your experience in whatever way possible that you find to be expansive for the next person who may be, going through that transition and experience at this point.
Yeah, I think. Do you want me to just talk about like my experience with like being a trans person? Is that what
I think more so like what's hitting me, what I'm being pinged, that could be very, and I think anything will be very expansive, but your journey too, if that feels, right for you.
Sure. It's funny because when I moved to San Francisco in 2003, and it's hard to remember this from this time frame, but trans men were invisible.
Really?
If trans guys were passing or had transitioned, they were like, stealth. They were blending in society. There weren't a lot of, there definitely weren't any like public famous trans men.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly no trans women that I could think of. So there was like this invisibility, and this is prior to like the internet and chat rooms and all of that. So I was having an experience for most of my life that I had no way to contextualize or
no
even
expanders.
communicate. Thank you.
Yeah, none.
Yeah. When I moved to San Francisco, I was hanging out with this woman, and she said, "Do you want to see a picture of my ex-boyfriend?" And I said, "Sure." To me, it was going to be a cisgendered guy, right? Mm-hmm. And she showed me this guy, and he was trans, and he had top surgery, and my stomach just dropped. And that second I saw him, I was like, "Oh, that's me."
How beautiful!
Because it was the first moment of expansion, right? Mm. Because the possibility then came into my consciousness. So I started that process then, and it was a slow process, but that's when it started. And I remember talking to my parents about being trans, and my mom said, "Oh, that's interesting, because when you were 6, you came home and you were very upset, and you said, 'I don't want my uterus.'"
I think Ashley might have told me that story, which is so powerful.
It really is. And she said, "How do you know what a uterus is?" As I was 6.
Totally.
And I said, "I don't know, but I do not want mine."
Wow.
And my mom just, I guess that always struck her, Yeah. And I was always a tomboy and, all the things. And I've always experienced, this is like difficult to explain because it's pretty esoteric, but I've always experienced my energy as masculine. Mm-hmm. So my body looked however it looked during different periods of my life. But my energy has never changed. Mm-hmm. I hear a lot of people say, I was born in the wrong body. I think that's a very common trans narrative. Mm-hmm. I think that's a lot of people's experiences, but I also think that the medical industry has sort of perpetuated that storyline and made it one of the only ones available for people, because that's what you have to say in order to get services.
Oh, sure.
And
absolutely.
And to transition.
Mm-hmm.
Being trans is still considered a mental illness. And so in order to transition, you have to get a therapist to say that you're transgender. You can't say it for yourself. And so in order to be allowed to have surgery, you have to get a letter from a therapist stating that you are actually a transgender person and that you have been living mentally as a transgender person for a specific period of time.
There's a time frame.
Yeah, exactly. There's a time frame.
You're like, does my entire life count? Does that? Okay.
No, you have to sit with the therapist and let them experience it
for that
a year.
time frame.
And it's so funny because I think to myself, what person would choose
this path
to go through this situation?
Just for like shits and giggles.
Yeah, exactly. Or another question is like, what person is having these thoughts of confusion around their body in this particular way? It's so unique. Mm-hmm. It's not I don't think that, maybe you could speak to this more, but I doubt that there's a moment in your life where you've been like, I'm very sure that I'm actually a man. I mean, it's not.
I'm going through the period right now where I definitely am pretty sure I'm a man. Yeah, absolutely not.
It just makes no sense why it's structured this way. I was doing a lot of activism before I went into herbalism, but one of the things that always struck me is that it's considered a mental illness, but none of the insurances cover any of the surgeries or even the therapy. So it's just a very interesting conundrum that a lot of trans people find themselves in.
Do you have hope for the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Me too.
Absolutely. I mean, how could I not, from the vantage point that where I started to now? One of the things that I was talking with Ashley about this morning is I wrote my thesis on trans women who are incarcerated in male prisons. And it was an oral history project. And I interviewed a group of trans girls. And I asked them all, and this was, just 2009, so this was just a decade ago. I asked them all what they thought their prospects for their careers would be, and all of them said sex work.
You're kidding me.
And it was heartbreaking for me. And I just saw that they really didn't see any future. And now I look at Laverne Cox and Janet Mock, and I think, wow, I would love to pick up that project at some point and interview young trans girls who are transitioning today. Mm-hmm. So just to show like the power of seeing someone succeed that's like you.
That's why I can't not. I'm not even giving myself credit for this because before this terminology was comparisons, comps. It's everything.
Totally.
It is everything. Is being able to have that, to know, to see, to believe that the same is possible for you.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I actually love about your work the most, Lacy, is the language that you use to contextualize these things that are like the language that you use feels like just so accurate to me. Like when you use it, it's like, yeah, that is what I've been trying to say, but I didn't know the word for it. So thank you so much for doing that work for all of us.
Oh, I mean, thank you to whomever is channeling that through me. I can't even take any credit. So thank you.
It's powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being open to it.
Absolutely.
Open to receiving it. So I think where I left off was just seeing that trans guy for the first time. And at first, I think there was a part of me that didn't want to lose. It's confusing because I think part of why I transitioned was not for myself. So that's why the being born in a wrong body narrative doesn't resonate with me quite so well. I really feel like I transitioned because of safety. And I got tired of walking through the world as an in-between person. Mm-hmm. I've had so much street harassment. I've been jumped multiple times. I mean, the list goes on and on. And it's funny because it's been for all different reasons. It's been for being a dyke. It's been for being a fag. Yeah. It's been for being trans. It's like however the person is reading me. Projecting, yeah. I was on the bus with my ex-girlfriend, and I was just so tired. So I rested my head on her shoulder, and I started falling asleep. And then I felt like this energy, and there was this man, and he was staring at us, and I could feel like the energy. It was just so hostile. And he looked like he was going to scream at us or Lord knows what was going to happen because it was the bus in San Francisco.
I know,
anything.
You think LA's bus system's a thing? No. It's a whole nother level.
The Bay Area, it's all happening.
Yeah,
now.
Even more than New York.
Yeah, seriously. So this guy, it comes to the next bus stop, and this guy yells at us, "It's a sin to lay with your son," and gets off the bus. And I just looked at her and I was thinking, oh my gosh, what has that man been through?
I know. I love that you were able to have that perspective.
Read this that way. And my partner at the time said, do you realize that I must look so old if he thought that you were my son? And I was like, I did not know how to respond. And she called her mom, and her mom's like, honey, I'm going to send you eye cream. Don't worry. And I was like, does anybody want to talk about the fact that I just got read as a young boy?
There's so many layers to this.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
I was like, this is a tragic misreading of the situation.
You're like,
okay?
Look, asshole.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm offended. Not for the reasons you are thinking.
Exactly. Well, I wasn't offended. That's the funny thing is like, I'm passing. I haven't even started my transition yet. And I'm passing.
You look excellent. Like there's a lot of things going on there.
It's funny because once I did start my medical transition, I was walking with a friend of mine, and this is the funny thing about San Francisco. It's these guys yelled at us on the street, and they were like, faggots. And of course, that's horrible. No one should be getting name called like
Absolutely.
that. But we're two trans guys just starting our transition. And I looked at him and I was like, we're passing. And we were like high-fiving. And they're like, also, that is really not okay. But we're passing.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You have to write a screenplay about this sometime. I mean, Transparent covered like really beautiful, especially, I don't know if you identified a lot with like the Jewish family.
Oh yeah, that was really what I identified with more than the trans experience.
Me too, even though I'm like not even honorary Jew. I was like, I identify with this family so deeply.
Totally.
But we need more. We just need more and more and more.
Definitely.
Expanders.
When there was that moment when Allie and Josh are at Cantor's and they're talking about how her stomach isn't good. She's going to get the tofu schmear. I was like, I think I've had this conversation with my sister. This is weird. And then when she gets home and hands the bags to the mom, and the mom goes, who changed the order? And I was like, okay, here we go. This is my life.
Yeah. That was the best show.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Yeah, that part really resonated for me.
How about the process of together calling in the baby and going through? Because for you, how did you feel about the prospect of having a son? Did that bring up anything? I mean, amongst the whole fucking process brings up just everything and, fucking family trauma and all the things.
I think it probably, I don't know what anyone else's experience was, but for me, it wasn't about not being able to relate to him in a particular way because I've, like I said, really identified with masculine energy my whole life. And also, I'm just getting to know him, and I don't know what his path is going to be.
Completely.
He could decide that he identifies more as genderqueer or be like, who knows? I just don't know what his experience is going to be. I see a lot of young people today that are really way beyond gender, or are beyond, or really see gender more as what I see it as, really as performative.
Yeah,
and are able to play with their gender in a particular way, which is, I think, really why people are so threatened by transgender people, because I think what it really represents is there is this thing that we've been told is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's static. It's unchangeable. And if you believe that that's not true and you see that that's not true, what else that we've been told is the way that it is isn't. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, it explodes all your entire belief system.
Completely. And I obviously, am so privileged, and I will never understand so many concepts. But I like to say fortunate enough to grow up with my uncle who was gay, and I grew up in a very conservative area, and he was incredibly flamboyant and so beautiful and talented and amazing. And he was one of the first, in the wave to contract AIDS. So he really represented a lot. And I remember when I was little, and I think it's just the way that because I read energy. And so I love the fact that you say that you identified with a specific energy, because that's my gift. I'm like always tapping into reading energy, and you as an incredibly empathic person, I think reads energy as well. And when I used to, really look at my uncle, I would be like, wow, he transcends everything. And I think for some people, of course, that's what we're seeing, just in society, to them, it's fear-based. But for me, I was like, that's magic.
It is magic,
incredible.
Isn't it?
Anything's possible.
Yeah. I think I think it is magical.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you say that because Ashley calls me a unicorn.
Oh, it's totally true. It's magic. It's so beautiful.
It feels like it. It feels like I have had the privilege of exploring different parts of myself that most people never get to delve into. That's definitely part of my work this time around. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's interesting because I think that part of why I've always really felt more comfortable with my masculine energy was that my feminine energy feels like very sacred and fragile and personal to me. And it's not something that I'm comfortable sharing with the world. Mm-hmm. It's something that I have more of a personal relationship with. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be very similar to other people's experiences, that they have like these, it's almost like percentages, you know? Like maybe there's a part of them that feels more masculine or has more masculine energy. And that's a place where there's only certain areas where they'd feel comfortable exploring that part of their energy. Like maybe it's at work. Mm-hmm. They bring on a more masculine energy in order to like run their company or something like that. Or I think for some women, maybe they embody more of that energy in their sexuality or wherever it is. Because I think
or nurturing,
definitely
so many different, spaces.
And men as well. I think that they have different areas. But I think that there's no way to escape that part of my experience was that our culture told us that femininity was also weakness. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where I am right now in my journey with gender is understanding how that got ingrained into my belief system.
I think it's so beautiful because you, like you're saying, have had the opportunity to explore aspects of yourself that most people will never ask themselves in this lifetime. And you know me, like that's all I love to do. That's my work yes. in this lifetime.
Asking the hard questions.
Oh yeah. And just like all of those different nooks and crannies. And what's so beautiful about the process you're going through is you get to look at the degrees,
yes.
right? Because now you're at this space and time mm-hmm. in your identity and you get to ask this like huge, beautiful question of how comfortable am I with my feminine energy and moving into that. And that is so, so beautiful to have that arc.
It's been a process. And I think it's also changed a lot since Solomon got here because I'm nurturing him. And so I think there was a part of me that thought that, maybe this feminine energy is going to come out when my son comes because I'm going to be, Ashley and I are co-parenting, like mm-hmm. very, very much co-parenting. And it hasn't been what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. I really feel like I'm actually coming more into my masculinity in a particular way and feel very clear on my role as his father. And I think part of that is because in this particular situation of having a child, what I'm going through is incomparable to the sacrifices and experiences that Ashley's having as his mother.
And are you speaking to hormonally and everything?
Yeah, hormonally, nursing him.
Physically,
I mean, just all of these pieces that are things that I can't do
mm-hmm.
for him. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really mm-hmm. enjoying being able to nurture him and bring that energy from my masculinity.
Beautiful. Oh, he's so lucky.
Which is interesting because I wanted to go back to that story that I was telling you before about that family. And this just goes along with the projections that people have. So they didn't know that I was trans. And I was being so nurturing and loving with their son. It was so cute, Lacy. He was like, Nic is my best friend. Can we have a best friend sleepover?
Stop it.
And so, they were still like, hanging out in the front room. And I was like, sure. And, he was like laying down in the bed with me. I had like a blow-up mattress on the floor. And I said to his mom, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep in the room with him. When he falls asleep, please take him out. And then I was wearing a little eye mask because they were still like up and walking around. Yeah. And I take the eye mask off and I look at him and he's like smiling at me. Huge. He was like, my best friend. I'm having a best friend sleepover.
Wow.
He was so happy. And so I just thought it was so sweet. And what I was experiencing was that he wasn't getting enough of the type of attention that he needed.
Absolutely.
And so for me to walk in and give him that kind of attention was very profound for him. And so afterwards, the mother spoke to my friend whose house it was and said, I think your friend Nic is a pedophile. And my heart just broke.
Oh,
because
wow.
And it was this moment where I had another realization about gender.
And projection, too, of like,
of course.
So many layers there.
The projections for her were probably about her inability to really take care of her son in a certain way.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, it was about her belief that a man couldn't show up like that and love a child that way and just want to play with him and set up the train set and be caring in that way.
Man, I have so many things to say on. We've had these conversations before because you've been wrongly accused of many things. You know,
my whole life,
your whole life.
I'm apparently a projection absorber.
Well, I think too. You're here. I mean, that's one of your biggest gifts. Is you're here to mess up the status quo. You're here to fuck people's minds up a little bit, and
that is true.
Hard. It's so hard to be the brunt of that, but that's another one of your unicorn aspects that are so beautiful. But I do have to say, on many notes, especially in something like call out culture, which is so, it's an epidemic right now. And I think people are going about it in an entirely wrong way if they want to be heard, from many different facets, that we never know. We never know what another person is or what they're going through.
Definitely.
And so that's such a beautiful outline of that experience. And most often than not, when we're doing that, as this mother had, we're just, there's something there that we're triggered by of our own inability and our own lack. And it's that inside experience.
Yeah. Again, I just felt so sad.
So sad. It's heartbreaking.
It really was. Because I think that's one of the hard things when someone says something about you like that, to just know who you are so well that you can have compassion for the other person's experience.
That's the ultimate place to reach, because I think it can take time to get to that. When you hit that blow, you get that blow that hurts so bad.
Yeah, because it's not even mean. I mean, it's the person's own stuff. It has nothing to do with
completely.
You. You could literally pick you up like a little prop and stick another person in the same experience, the same thing.
Totally.
But I think what happens is maybe there's a little seed. In this situation, I was very clear, but in other areas of my life, there's been a little seed of your own stuff.
Yeah.
And then that person's stuff they're projecting on you, just pings that little wound.
Yeah.
And then it just lights up,
Oh yeah. And that's my favorite thing. I went through this not long ago. And it's my favorite thing to go through, because when we have those wild experiences or rock bottoms or, whatever they are, it's one of the biggest gifts from the universe. It's so hard and painful. This experience, you were so clear with yourself, but others haven't been that way. Mm-hmm. But it's so beautiful because the universe is I have something for you. So I have to stick this magnifying glass up to one of your hardest wounds.
Yes.
And smack you into place to get so clear with your authenticity and who you are and your worth, to give you this thing. And so thank you for sharing that. I think that's beautiful.
Lacey, sometimes that magnifying glass feels like the sun on the ant.
That's how it's supposed to feel.
Oh,
so anybody who's in that place right now, who you're just fucking burning under that thing, or, dwindling down into that space, just know it would not be happening if something really powerful you've been asking for didn't want to come through. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And you know what is interesting about that analogy or that imagery is that if you can just recognize that you're under a magnifying glass, then just to pan out a bit, then you can move out from under the magnifying glass and the pain stops.
You can have that distance.
Exactly.
Can we pivot into, because I love this experience. I wasn't a part of you. I didn't have your perspective, but Ashley calling you in, I was around for, I got to see some of that. And what I loved, I don't know if this is too personal. I'm sharing Ashley's story, but I think it's a really expansive one for people out there. She had left her prior relationship, which I distinctly remember Erica Sheedy Cohen and Ashley and I all sitting about and being like, I think you got to go. I think you got to make that list for what you want. Ashley, you deserve it. You deserve the family and the whole thing. She's so, so special.
Yeah, she really is.
So then all of a sudden, not too long later, and I think I even remember being like, some tests are going to come your way.
I wasn't a test.
No, there was one right around.
Yes.
Same time frame. And it was very, small. Yeah. But I love this story and I don't want to paraphrase it, but this is what I remember from it, is she had gone up to lead a breathwork event up there.
Yeah, she was teaching at my shop.
She was teaching at your shop. Okay.
Yes, this is what's so interesting.
And so When she comes back, this is the story that I get. She teaches.
No. Yes.
You're so present for this. And then you guys had an experience where she came to the house and she was like, Lacy, he was just making medicine with the herbs. He's like making this medicine and he was so present. And then what I think is so beautiful is you sent her a letter.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this.
I want your perspective.
Okay. So she, what's interesting is that I wasn't even familiar with Ashley's work. My event coordinator was the one that invited her to come up because she was doing a series on women's health. And interestingly, the first time that she was scheduled to come up, I think it was when she was going through that breakup with her old partner. And I was still with someone at that time. So she actually canceled the class. And then at some point later, a little bit after that, I broke up with my partner, and then at some point later, she came back to teach the class that she had canceled. And she called me beforehand and said, "Could I have lunch with you?" And I thought, okay, I don't know why she wants to have lunch with me. I know the teachers, but I'm not really like unless I was friends with them before, and that's why I asked them.
Hands-on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I said, sure. But I was really busy, so I said, why don't you come to my house and I'll make lunch. So she came over and I made her lunch. And then she said, okay, I'm going to go work at a cafe until my class starts. And I was like, you can just stay at my house. I have to go run errands. So I left and I came back and she was there sitting on the porch with my cat in her lap.
Oh my
drinking tea. And I think then we went for a walk. Oh, actually, this is what happened first. My friend gave me this chocolate that she had made. And I offered Ashley some chocolate and she looked at me and said, can I move in, as a joke? Yeah. And I was like, there was like this pause where I was like actually processing that as a real question. Wow. And I was like, yes.
The Libra and Aquarian in the same room.
Totally. I was like, yes. So there was like already that like weird moment of being like, we're now skipping several years into the future. And now let's go back to present time.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've established what's happening. Now let's go back to present time. We don't know each other.
But this chemistry is alive.
Yeah, something was clearly happening. Yeah. So then I said, do you want to go on a walk with me? Go walk the dog. And she said,
this Greta?
Yeah, Greta. Yeah.
You guys have to. I wonder if we can like have a photo in this episode. Greta's got
a magic tooth, so I would definitely put that photo up.
Barley isn't even as cute as Greta.
Barley is pretty special.
She's in the other room. Yeah, okay, no, this is how I'll be an unconscious parent. Yeah,
totally. So we went on this walk, and I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but Ashley said something to me, and I said, "Do you think you'll really be able to find someone to be with?" And she said, yeah, of course. And I was like, I'm not really sure. And I said, I'm just like a very different kind of person, and I'm not sure if I'm going to find somebody. And she laughed at me. And then we just kept walking. And when we had this like magical walk and everything. And then later when she recounted that experience to me, she said that she heard me tell her that I was trans, but I never said that to her.
100%.
It was happening in my own mind.
Yeah.
Because she had...
You guys are very telepathic, right?
Very. It's intense.
Because your engagement story is like a whole nother telepathic experience.
All the time. I don't even know why we talk.
Yeah, what's
but we
the
talk
point?
all the time.
Yeah, you guys are such communicators.
Talkers. I guess we're really talking on multiple levels at all times with each other. So then I went to her class, and I was floored by what she was doing there. Something in particular struck me. All the women that were in her class were laying on the floor, and they were doing breath work, and she's such a powerful teacher. I think that there's a lot of people that have done meditation for a long time, have done yoga for a long time, have done any number of things for a long time. That does not make them a good teacher. That is a separate skill set. And I think what's so amazing about Ashley is she's a good teacher. She could teach anything that she knows really well in a way that makes sense and resonates for people.
Beautiful.
So when I saw her teach, I was just floored. Shameless partner self-promotion or
yeah. We're plugging Ashley Neese right now has a new book out. It's called How to Breathe.
She does. But really what I was going to say is take a class with her in person if you can, because she's just such a powerful teacher. That's what made me fall for her, was when I saw her teach. Wow. Because she has a gift. And I saw her, there was one woman in the class who was struggling with her breath, and I think she was crying. And Ashley walked up to her, or knelt down beside her, and she whispered in her ear, "You've got this, girl."
Oh, I love that.
And she started regulating her breathing right then. And something just happened for me. And I went through this process within this meditation with myself, and really like cut ties with my ex, and really like came to this new place, and it was so powerful. And with no thought at all, I pulled out paper from the top drawer and just started writing Ashley a letter. And then I folded it up and I put it in an envelope. And at the end of her class, I walked over to hand it to her. And then as I was handing it to her, this is all spirit communicating to me. Then as I was handing it to her, I came into this moment where I was like, what am I doing?
I'm a nutcase right now. This is so crazy.
Like, I'm just being so weird.
Yeah, so weird.
But I had already handed it to her.
Yeah.
So she just looked at me and smiled at me, and I was like, "Oh my God!"
Thank God.
I am the smile was like, "Thank you." Well, this is how I was interpreting. This is my stuff, right?
Yeah, your stuff.
Thanks. Like that was like the interpretation for me, right, on my end. But she was having her own experience, and her experience was that she had this profound experience on the walk, and what she was she couldn't sleep all night, and she was thinking about writing me a letter when she got home.
I know, that's what she said.
So when I handed her the letter, she was like, of course he's handing me the letter. But my insecurities came out, right? Yes. And so I was like, oh my God, she must think I'm so weird. So then she told me later that she was wanting to like call me. She wanted to text me. She wanted to come back to the shop, all these things, but she just couldn't. And she read the letter and she was crying, and it was so meaningful to her. So then she went back down to LA, and then she wrote me, and then we started writing letters to each other.
I just hope that expands everybody, because it's so special and beautiful, and just like the ego that's lost in just those listening to spirit, listening to that guidance is just really, really profound. And not to say you guys haven't gone through your stuff. I mean, everybody's gone through theirs, but I just think that's so beautiful. And I would love to argue and say it was Solomon, but you guys hadn't fully spoken with him yet. So it's just really, really special.
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting things about relationships, and this is always a challenge, is they're really hard work. So
hard. I mean, they are so hard. Maybe the hardest thing. Yeah, aside from parenting, I assume.
Jean-Paul Sartre says, hell is other people. And I think he really means relationships, because you are, I say that, comically, because you're taking two people's free will and you're trying to make it work together.
On top of all of their shit.
Exactly.
That's the biggest part,
That's right.
And then you factor in things like free will. Like after that, it's wild.
There's just so many people in the room.
Yeah.
There's so many people in the room when it's just the two of us standing there. Yeah. It's like on a good day, we're both our adults. Mm-hmm. And on a bad day, we're both our scared kids.
Completely. Which for us tends to be more often than not, Max and I. It's so hard, man. And when you're busy and you're working, and now you guys, in the mix have a child, which I assume has brought things to a far deeper level and far closer. But it is just for the people listening. We hear you, man. We're with you. Like, totally. It's fucking hard.
Yeah, it really is. What I was going to say before was that it's challenging to know, is this hard because I'm supposed to be here and we're supposed to heal each other, or is this hard because this is a test from the universe?
That's the problem.
Yeah,
that's always the question, especially with people with abandonment issues. That's the big, like me, talking about people like me.
Yes.
That's the hardest question always.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not a quitter, so I will stay and stay and stay. I am ready to do the work, anytime. I don't care what the work is. I want to do it.
You want to dig in.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership, because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have, and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code, EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. Let's pivot to herbalism.
Okay.
Because I think this is a really fun spot that you'll be incredibly expansive for people. How did you get into it?
I think, I've listened to all of your other podcasts, and when Alexis was on, she said something like, the way that everybody else does, you get sick and then you have to heal yourself. It's like, duh. Yeah. So same trajectory for me. I had like very severe adrenal fatigue. Yeah. You and I have talked about that, but I'll talk about my symptoms instead of like an overarching like idea of what this was. So
I agree. I think that's great.
Thanks.
Because a lot of people are struggling with what you're going to lay out.
Yeah, I know. I think it's part of our culture now.
Yeah.
So I was exhausted. It felt like a different type of exhaustion than what I feel like other people were experiencing. It just kept getting worse. I knew that I was medicating myself with coffee, and that was like basically it was keeping me like going. And so I was living in San Francisco. I think a huge part of what was happening for me also was that when I wrote that thesis and I was doing that oral history project, I think that really, holding all those women's stories really sort of collapsed the last bit of my nervous system that was able to keep going. Because I didn't know how to be in their stories as an observer.
Instead of an empath.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I met my ex, and she was moving to Massachusetts. And I thought that'd be fun to take a road trip. I'll drive you out there. This was right at the beginning of my transition as well. And so I drove her out there, and I grew up in LA. Mm-hmm. I've lived in LA and then San Francisco for my whole life. So I've always been in cities. Mm-hmm. And I was so moved being that close to nature when I dropped her off there. I just felt like I need to be in this environment. Interestingly, that was like absolutely not the correct place for her in particular ways. She hated it.
Yeah, but it was great expander for you.
It was the right place for me. And so I went home and I thought about it and I talked to her about it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to move out there. Mm. And I got a job as an assistant to this man who owned a typewriter repair shop in Amherst in Massachusetts. But right before I was going out there, he fell ill, and so I wasn't able to take that job anymore. I'm telling this story in a nonlinear way. I apologize if it's confusing to follow. Before I was heading out there, I came out as trans at my workplace that I'd been at for 3 years, and I was I'm a very hard worker, and when I came out as trans, they fired me, and I asked them, why are you letting me go? I've been working for you very hard for 3 years. I've never been late. I've come in when anybody needed a shift covered. I've always shown up for you. And they said, you're making people uncomfortable. And so they didn't outright say it was because I had asked people to start using male pronouns. Mm. And so I went home and talked to my partner at the time, and she said, they fired you because you are transitioning. You need to go talk to the Transgender Law Center. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. She's like, what are you talking about? This is like
so obvious.
It's so obvious. And I was like, because to me, I was like, but there has to be like another reason. Why would someone do that? That's crazy, Yeah. So I went and talked to the lawyers of the Transgender Law Center, and I ended up settling out of court with them. And that provided me with the finances to move to Massachusetts. And when I got there, I said, you know what? I'm so tired of like being on the cycle of I'm exhausted, so I have to drink coffee, and then I get more exhausted in the afternoon, I have to drink coffee again. And then I feel awake at night. So I decided to quit drinking coffee. And that's when I figured out what was really wrong, because I couldn't get out of bed. I was losing language. I was like a zombie all day long. And then right around like 4 p.m. and then around 8 p.m., I would just come alive and I was totally awake. And so I started going through the allopathic route and getting all this testing done. But the tests that they offer around adrenal stuff are...
Which they still don't recognize.
Yeah, I know.
It's still not recognized.
It's terrible. I mean, essentially, and maybe you've talked about this before, but you pee in this jug all day long. Then they test
the cortisol.
Yeah, they test your pee, and they're like, well, you have the correct amount of cortisol, so there's nothing wrong. But my cortisol was going into my body at the wrong times.
Totally.
And until I went to see a naturopathic doctor and they tested me through saliva and tested me on an every 2-hour basis, there's no way that they would have found that.
Absolutely, which is completely unrecognized telepathically right now.
Absolutely.
Or what it was 3 years ago when I was going through that route.
We can get into that later, but I think that one of my things that I learned from that and other experiences after that is that the best place to spend your money is on the tests.
Yeah. Oh, test, don't guess. Me too. I learned that the hard way. I learned that from years of guessing and like being like, because of fads, like I have candida, you know, and it's like all of that. And then when I finally tested it, I was like, oh, cut and dry. This is pretty simple of what's happening. I mean, I just experienced this with, you know, you guys can find my naturopath. Her name's Dr. Nic Gill. She's right on the website under Essentials, but she finally ran like the full panels.
Yes.
And it was like, it's so basic, you know, to have the MTHFR or whatever, but I have it from both of my parents, so it's pretty severe. And to just give me a methylated version of B vitamins now to take forever transformed my energy.
Exactly. And the thing is, you it's like you're putting the money in for the testing up front instead of going through like thousands of dollars
supplements,
exactly,
guessing.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Going to healers, like just energy, which I'm not condoning. I'm not condoning those. I think that's equally as important for support. But once you have the clear answer, you know how to support it actually in a much more affordable way.
Totally. And you can help yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so powerful about it is like you really understand what's going on. Then you can do research about whatever. Exactly.
Yeah.
You can educate yourself. Yeah. And then then also you know which healers to go to and you know which people to go to.
Exactly.
Because you know to look for someone who specializes in
certain things.
What you have.
Absolutely.
So, I kept getting tossed around to all these different doctors on the allopathic side. No one could tell me what was going on. I remember seeing this one doctor, and this is when I gave up. She said, yeah, we're all tired.
I just want to take a moment for the people who are out there who are struggling right now and you haven't found the clarity of how, and you've experienced it in every form, but how much you're harassed about your symptoms, man.
It's horrible.
How much people make you feel crazy and insane and as if you're making something up because they can't, especially allopathically, put their finger on it. I've had like that so many abusive situations where I'm like, and I just wasted all of my money on that. It's so sad that, you know, so I just really want to take a moment to support you guys and that you're not crazy. What you're feeling is real. And that, yes, eventually finding the right provider and doing the right test will most likely, hopefully bring some clarity. I mean, I've had so many ways in and out of what has healed a lot of things for me that are totally off the fucking radar to, you know, from the naturopath. And it takes it for me, it's been chipping away at things at the right time. But yeah, I just really want to add that support to somebody listening. You're not crazy. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that because that's just 100% true. We've both had that experience.
Yeah.
I remember just speaking on this, I remember one time I went to the doctors and I had a UTI and it was going into a kidney infection. And I went and he gave me a particular antibiotic and it just tore my stomach lining up. And it was one that I now know I'm allergic to. And I was telling him what my symptoms were. And he literally said, your symptoms don't add up. And he turned to my partner and said, is he lying?
This is so common. It's crazy.
It's totally common. So then I left there and went to see someone else. And then this doctor said, this was so interesting. I want to tell this story because this is like a common experience particularly for women, but for most people, and very particularly for the trans community. The doctor, what she was checking me to try to figure out what was going on and why that antibiotic wasn't working so that she could give me the correct one. And she said, I looked at your chart. What's the testosterone for? And I said, well, I'm trans. And she was like, oh. Then she lifts up my shirt, which, what would that have to do with a urinary tract infection?
UTI, come on.
And it's 3:00 in the morning. I have a 103-degree fever. I'm completely out of it. I look over at my partner, and she's in the corner crying because she doesn't know how to help me.
Yeah.
She feels like totally scared and doesn't know. She can see that what's happening is wrong, but has no idea what to say.
Yeah.
And I'm totally out of it. So I can't say anything. And actually, it's not even that I can't say anything, Lacy. This is what's weird about it is I've just been through this so many times with the doctors, you know? I'm just like, okay, let's go through like this thing that's just like your personal stuff of whatever you're projecting onto me. And can I please now speed this process up so that I could get this antibiotic, which is what I came in here for. So she sits down on the chair next to the bed and she puts her feet up on the bed that I'm on.
So like her power move.
Yep. Crosses her legs and folds her arms. So she's sitting in this total power position. And she goes, okay, so when we're little girls, we're taught to wipe ourselves front to back.
She did not do this.
And that's when I looked over and my partner was crying. That's right.
That would definitely make me as a partner feeling very helpless and not able to advocate.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
And I couldn't even believe that our medical system is failing us to this degree, to the trans community, to this degree that you don't even know not to say that to somebody.
I mean, come on, man.
Totally.
It's insane.
It's amazing, like what's going, and it's not even this doctor's fault.
Totally.
She has no idea. She has no education. I mean, to me, it's common sense not to tell someone who's trans they don't know how to wipe themselves.
Come on.
And the thing that was so fascinating to me is when I went in there and she didn't know that I was trans, she was ready to help me figure out why I had a UTI and why I kept getting these kidney infections from the UTIs. Yeah. And the minute that she found out that I was trans, she wanted to blame it on me, that I was giving these to myself because I'm so stupid that I don't know how to wipe myself properly.
And it's like, I mean, even Lila, you've experienced like crazy harassment. I mean, this is insane that we don't have this bedside manner being taught properly for many varying degrees of supporting people. It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Like, we're not bashing allopathic. Like, we even had a conversation right before this where we're like, thank God for allopathic and modern medicine. Yep. But yeah, in terms of like bedside manner and speeding up with science and time and there's a lot that we're missing. So this definitely made you empower yourself through fucking herbs.
Yeah.
You're like, you know what?
Exactly.
I will actually segue for one second. Go ahead. That when I've only ever had one UTI in my life. It's after Max and I started having sex. I never had one. I had no idea what to do. I was like texting all my pals, even Erica and like my friend Meredith and stuff. I'm like, have you guys had UTIs? What do I do? And they're like, go to a doctor, just get the antibiotic. And so I went that route and I did it. And it was, like a weird thing. I peed orange. It went away. A week later, it came back. And I was like, well, clearly. And in fact, anytime I've ever done things allopathically first instead of doing things herbally or preventive, anytime I've done that first, they truly have failed me. And so after that, I had to call up a fucking medical intuitive that Max's mom sees who prescribed me like all the things you need to know. It's like the overuse of D-mannose and all that stuff. And then to kill whatever bacteria is coming up. Went away. I've never had one since. And put Max on the same fucking prescription.
Yes, exactly.
So that we're doing the same protocol. So we stop giving each other this bacteria.
Yes.
So now we can segue into herbs.
Well, I wanted to say one thing because I really don't think people know this. I don't care how tired you are after you have sex. Go pee. Go pee
after sex. Always pee after.
Yes.
That's the one thing I learned because I never even thought that was like a big deal or wasn't even something I was really taught. And you better believe after that, I pee every time after sex.
Yeah, it's a little trick that's just like you have to do that.
Wash out the bacteria.
Exactly. Yeah. And interestingly, this might be like a little graphic, but trans men's genitalia change. And because the clitoris is extended, it means that it's pulling everything forward, which means that the urethra is actually more exposed to the outside of the body and they have a higher chance of getting urinary. Exactly.
And also when you start taking the testosterone and your estrogen starts to decrease, everything then relaxes down there, right?
Exactly.
So like that's how you're saying the expansion starts to happen.
Exactly.
So I'm so glad that you're educating on that because that's super important.
And that doctor that was saying that to me should have known all of that and communicated that to me. You know?
Come on.
That's the piece that I think is missing is really just that education, so that she could have actually helped me, because I didn't know any of that.
To help you prevent future.
Exactly.
Yeah. Rather than making you feel that shame and embarrassment.
Exactly. Well, and also, like, I wasn't absorbing any of it. It was meant to make me feel that way, but I didn't absorb any of it because I have my own community to fall back on, or had my own community at the time, where I could say, hey guys, like, are you guys getting UTIs often? It's like, yeah, let me tell you why. I've already done research on this. You know?
Oh, thank God.
So yeah, I just think that's, it's also powerful to like have these conversations, because sometimes people will be getting all these UTIs and they're not talking to anyone about it because of the shame.
Yeah,
exactly.
Afraid. Yeah.
And then they can just have one friend be like, oh yeah, go pee after sex. And then it just, boom, it's changed.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. Okay, now you have to tell us about herbs. Because it's actually, I can't wait to get to my big question is going to be, as an herbalist, you're obviously far more advanced than I am. This has turned into your profession as of now. I want to really get into like, what are the household herbs you think everybody should have, and what form, how they can find it at Homestead, because you have a very high quality. So let's finish your journey and then get into those.
Okay, so through that process, I ended up healing myself using herbs from the adrenal stuff that was going on for me. I really ended up making my own blend, which we now actually sell on the website, which is called Stress Finesse,
which you gave to me.
Yes, it's a fantastic formula. It's just I can go into more of how I formulated that later. But once I healed myself with those plants, I had this moment where this is sort of like the connecting thread between what I was doing before and how I went into herbalism, is I just felt so slighted by the whole experience. And I felt like I wanted to make herbal medicine more accessible to people, so that in these particular areas where allopathic medicine couldn't help them, that there was an answer. And one of my goals with Homestead was to make it cool, to make it beautiful, to make it interesting, and to make it more modern. Because
true Libra.
When I love herb stores. Wherever I go into the herb store. But when people think of an herb store, they think of a lady in a long, flowy hippie skirt,
or like Chinese,
Chinese medicine. Right?
Yeah, Chinese medicine.
There's like these, archetypes or something in the industry. So I really wanted to break out of that and make it something that maybe they're just trying it because it's like beautiful. Or maybe they're like, well, I've kind of heard about this. This looks really nice. Like maybe I'll try this. So it's like the design aspect was like a way to reach people, like a segue into herbalism. But when I first started, I was just making things, I was just trying different recipes and playing around with it. And then I started selling stuff at around the different farm shares in Massachusetts and the local apothecary. And I actually ended up interning at the local apothecary there. And I went to herb school. This is one of the strange things about me that I've come to realize is one of my unique things, is when I get a little spark of interest in something, I dive like
so
beyond deep. Like it's like, and now I'm doing this for work, and now I'm going to school, and now it's like I'm reading every single book, and
total MG too. Yeah, completely.
It's like I become fully immersed in whatever I'm intrigued with.
Yeah.
Then my partner at the time wanted to leave Massachusetts, so I actually wasn't ready, because I was having a particular experience there that was really important to me, which was just really living in nature. I lived this family had a barn on their property, and when their father fell ill, they converted it into a home for him, and he passed. And so I rented this converted barn, and it was like a little hobbit house. And like I'm 5'5", and I could touch the ceiling in parts of the kitchen. It was like just a little house, and it was on this giant farm, and beyond the farm was the woods. And I would just every day I would go out because I had this money. This is one of the things you always talk about. At the time when I got fired from that job and I went through that experience and we settled out of court, that money, I felt like the situation was horrible, but that money allowed me to take 2 years off to heal myself.
Yeah.
And so
it was your fuck you fund.
Exactly. Thank you. See, you have a word for everything. It's so awesome. So and
it really was like, fuck you guys.
Yeah. It enabled me to heal myself.
Absolutely. And to go really find your worth through this work too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And every time I would go out into the woods, I would find something magical out there. And so I just knew that I was meant to be there at that time. Like I found deer vertebrae.
Wow.
I found antlers. I mean, things that were just like beautiful. Every time I'd find these beautiful objects, I found like turkey feathers, hawk feathers, and I would just know, okay, like I'm meant to be walking in this place. And it was just getting sign after sign. And to me, they were reading loudly as signs. But I wanted to continue being with her, and so I decided to move back with her to Oakland. And when I got there, I couldn't believe that there was no apothecary there.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I don't think there is here. There's Botanicas, but there's no apothecary.
Everyone I know talks about it. I even talked about it for a while, and I was like, I don't how you've experienced. It's such a thing.
Yeah,
it's such a thing.
Definitely. So I decided to. I actually went to Temescal Alley, which anyone who's in Oakland probably knows about Temescal Alley. And I went to the plant store there, and I asked the woman. I said, would you be willing to carry my line? And I showed her my line. And she said, yeah, that would do great here. For some reason, when she said yes, I had this moment of like, why am I selling it in her store instead of starting my own?
That's so beautiful.
But I had no money because I had been off of work for 2 years. And then I went and talked to the Suzanne, who owns the gallery in Temescal Alley, and we just really connected. We're still close friends today. And she said, you know what? There's a space opening up right next to me, and I really feel like you're supposed to be there, and I'm going to introduce you to the landlord, which we hold our landlord's information like sacred, like so confidential.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that was like a big deal. So It turns out that the woman who owns Temescal Alley is this awesome old dyke.
Wow.
Who's been there since the 70s, and her wife bought Temescal.
She probably got it for nothing.
Next to nothing.
Wow.
And the reason why she and her wife bought it is that they're actually, for work, she was a lawyer, but her love was marble sculpture, and she had all these friends who were artists. So all those little shops in Temescal used to be artist studios.
No way.
So when I met Sarita, we just totally vibed. And she, at the end of the conversation, she stuck her hand out. She was like, so do you want a beer? And she stuck her hand out.
Oh,
and I just was staring at her hand like,
the chills.
I'm about to start my own business. And I shook her hand.
Wow.
And so then I walked off and I was like, I don't have any money. What am I going to do? But I'm like a very powerful manifester when I set my mind on something. So then I was talking to a friend of mine, his mentor, that I used to work with at the LGBT Historical Society. And I was like, Michael, what am I going to do? Michael Nava, he is just my eternal cheerleader. He's such a support for me. And so he said, he got out his checkbook and he wrote me a check for $1,000 right there on the spot. And he said, go get the rest of it.
Oh my God, I want to cry.
So between him believing in me and Sarita believing in me, just something.
Vision holders.
Yes.
They're your total vision holders.
Yes.
Wow.
So I just hustled. I got out a credit card. I did the hustle, Well,
tell us about that hustle, because that's expansive for people that are like, I know my purpose. How do I start my company?
Oh gosh. Well, I can tell you my experience, but ultimately it's just like, to me, when I say the hustle, it's like, do whatever is the next thing in front of you. Do whatever's required. Say yes. Ask all the questions. Put yourself out on the line.
Listen to the pings is huge too.
Yes, big time. Because I kept following those, and that's what led me, right? I've always listened to the pings,
That's
actually.
amazing that you do.
I mean, that's what led me to Massachusetts. That's what led me back. It's, I don't have any fear around listening to the pings. I think that's something that is I'm lucky for that, because I think some people struggle and don't trust the pings. But every time I've listened to them, it landed me in the right place. So to me, they're just my guides.
Yeah.
So one thing came together, and then the next thing came together, and then I found a woodworker, and then I just pulled it all together. I'd managed a lot of business over the years, so I knew what I needed to do.
Yeah.
I need to set up a POS system. I need to get the herbs in. What am I going to put the herbs in? What do I want the store to look like? All of those pieces. So I just kept putting everything together, and it was happening very fast. This all happened in a month.
Jesus.
Oh, no, it was 6 weeks total.
What a manifester.
I had no money.
Wow.
And from there, I started this company.
What an expansive story.
And then this is again with the manifestation. In order to start your business, you have to when you get a business license, you have to put your business in the paper as
for your DBA.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for your
to
DBA.
get your account and everything.
So I went to the East Bay Express and to put my stuff in the paper, and you have to do it for like whatever it is, 4 consecutive weeks. And I ended up connecting with the person who I spoke with at the East Bay Express. So then when their Best of the East Bay issue was coming out 2 months later, the guy calls me and he said, "Hey, we'd really like to put you in the this Best of the East Bay issue." And I was like, okay, sounds good. They didn't tell me anything. Okay. They come out, he takes my photo. I thought, maybe he's just going to do a little feature or something. The East Bay Express issue comes out. There's such a big photo of the cover, Lacy, that I'm covering up the words East Bay Express.
Whoa.
There I am with my arms crossed, with my tattoos, never for money, always for love, across the cover of the East Bay Express. And the whole theme of it was the new authentic.
Oh, I love that.
And I just thought,
you were probably packed then.
Oh yeah, exactly. And then that story got syndicated on all the other local news sources. My friend Bonnie Chan, who I didn't know at the time, we're friends now, came in and did a piece on me. I think that was actually a little right before the East Bay Express, and put that out in a local Oakland paper. And it all just started happening. You know what I mean? It just all started coming together.
Follow those pings, guys. Follow those pings.
Exactly.
It's so true.
And so that's the short version of how we opened the shop.
What herbs do you think epidemically everybody should be taking right now if they're feeling drawn to taking herbs? Because your quality is incredible. And
thank you.
Like, you go into how many different types of plants there are for this one particular thing. And I mean, you guys really source with quality. You used to hand make a lot of it.
We still
right?
do.
You still, so you're handcrafting a lot of it.
Yeah,
I mean, I
all
stumbled into there when I went to visit Max's mom for the first time when she was living in Oakland, and I was totally blown away. I didn't know you or anything, and I was like, what a space. This is amazing.
Thank you.
And then I had the donuts that were nearby.
Oh, yeah. That's closed now, but yeah.
Oh man, bummer. Well, it shows how long it's been since I've been to Oakland.
It is a bummer because it was a perfect fit with my digestive bitters to be coming in right after the donuts.
That's so great to hit them on the way out.
Yes.
So what do you feel like? Because you're e-commerce, everything's available online.
It is. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't have an online store in the beginning. I really just wanted to have this one brick and mortar space, but so many customers were traveling through Oakland like you were, and then they would pick up one of the formulas, which I'll talk about in a moment, and then they'd call me and say, "This is the only thing that's ever worked for me.
Yeah.
Could you please send this to me?" And then I realized that it was because I was always thinking, go to your local apothecary. And then I realized they don't have a local apothecary.
Yeah.
So that's why I built the online store. It was really in response to customer requests.
Yeah. So tell us the formulas, the most important formulas.
Well, I want to say one thing, because I don't think I've really, this is one thing that's really important for people who are starting their own business. I've never really told my story very well. I'm very private. No one knows how much we donate every year, like none of these things, because I feel like a lot of them have become like a way of marketing.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm doing it because it's what I believe in. And
you're a mensch.
Thank you, Lacy.
I like to consider myself one, even though, again, I'm not even honorarily Jewish.
I love that. Well, you're Jewish. How about
yeah, there you go. I like that.
So one thing that I just wanted to say about the formulas, because I'm trying to get better at telling this story, is that one of the things that differentiates our tinctures is that we make them all with fresh plant, and we're one of the only companies that does that.
It's incredible. That's huge.
All of the bigger companies dry all of their plants first, because it gets complicated when you're putting plants in, because you're having to calculate how much water is in the plant in addition to how much water you're putting into the tincture to balance it out to make sure that you're getting the correct ratios.
Yeah.
So I won't get too heavy into like the alchemy or science behind all of that, but essentially, because we're sourcing fresh plant and using the fresh plant in the tinctures, you're getting all of the vitamins and nutrients that are dying off in the drying process. So that's one of the reasons why it's potency. Yeah. Also, most of the farmers that we work with they're all in the Bay Area, and they're almost all women-owned farms, which I think is pretty amazing. And the reason why I wanted to go in that direction also is that it's really hard for women to get into farming. It's very male dominated. And so it's because most people are growing vegetables. And if you go to a lot of the farmers markets and a lot of people who are growing for restaurants, it's very male dominated. So for me to be able to, at the beginning of a year, promise a farmer, I will purchase all of this from you if you grow this for me, then they can plant and they know that they're going to have a particular income. And so it really gives them more stability.
It's incredible.
So it's a powerful relationship that we have with the farmers. And then the other thing about our formulas is that I use gem essences in all my formulas. So my formulas are actually working both on the physical and also the energetic body. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people will come back and say, nothing else has worked for me, because I think what was happening is that they had not only a physical manifestation, but the physical manifestation was coming from something spiritual going on.
An energetic alignment as well.
Exactly.
It's incredible. Okay, now tell us the formulas.
Well, we have a lot of...
what did we spray right before this?
I believe you did the High Priestess.
Yes.
Which is just... I don't know. That's just like it's such a powerful one, and it's actually really good for the adrenals. But to me, it's just like a great formula to start off with right before you do your meditation, because it has the lapis lazuli in it, and so it's really going to open up the third eye. But then then you're opening up that third eye. But then it also has the wild Scotch pine and the lavender, which is bringing you down and bringing you really centered and grounding you.
Beautiful.
But I think before you ask, what herbs are sort of the staples that people should be taking right now.
Or just having in their home. That's like a big thing that I really want to empower people, because I think they get intimidated and there's all of this stuff at the health food store and the yada yada. But when you can get really intentional and specific, especially with your provider, like where you're going to, like to me, if you were to have every single person, was going to devise their tiny medicine cabinet of what they should sort of have at all times, like their version of a first aid kit, what formulas would that be that would line their cabinet?
My answer for you is for people to go online and look through all of our single plant tinctures, and whatever one is interesting you enough to click on it, get that one.
Interesting.
Because I trust that everybody knows what's best for their bodies, which is one of the reasons why my shop is designed so differently than most other stores. All of our herbs are out on the floor so that people can open all the jars themselves. They're not behind the counter where you have to ask someone who's an expert to open things for you.
Totally.
Because I really wanted to bring that sense of empowerment and play back into the experience of herbalism as well. Because I do think that we're all our own experts on our bodies.
Totally.
But for people who are really just sort of scared to get started in that way, for whatever reason, we do have formulas, and they're self-explanatory based off of the names of the formulas. So we have Stress Finesse, and we have Brain Booster, and we have an Anxiety Support. So we have a Dreaming formula. So people can go on and really select them based off of the formulas as well. And then another thing that we offer is custom formulation. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge.
So if someone could just purchase the custom formulation tincture and just type in, I want these percentages of each of these herbs, and we'll make them a custom formula with our single plant tinctures, and then we'll mail them their custom formula. Or
if they're like, hey, this is what I'm going through, you guys can also craft it for them as well.
That's actually one of the things we're working on right now, is trying to figure out how to do like an online questionnaire so that people can send it in, and we can basically do an online herbal consultation for them.
Oh, that's incredible.
So that's one of the things that I'm doing on my way out the door.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, because right now you are in the process of selling it.
Yeah, I birthed
as a true MG.
Yes.
You're a true MG.
Well, it's interesting, Lacy. I birthed this business into the world. We just had our 6-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
And I can see all of the steps that are ahead of the business, and they're not mine to take.
It's so good that you know that, and your ego is not attached to it either.
I know that someone else is going to do a better job than me, because it's the moment there's someone out there who is going to find the business for sale, and it is just going to light them up. And that's the moment. And for me, the thing that's lighting me up is I want to be at home with my son.
I love that. Oh, that's so expansive. We have one more route to take. I know this is a long podcast episode for those listeners, but I want to go into like how to invest 101, because you became, again, you had a spark of curiosity about it, and you went down the huge rabbit hole, even way further than I've been down it, and started to make some strategic choices of investing. What are like the top 5 tips that you learned from there that any person, any place in their life right now could take?
There's just one. Low-cost index funds at Vanguard.
Totally. Go listen to Tony Robbins.
Yes. It's
universal.
Because the truth is that at this point, the best investors in the world can barely keep up with what's happening.
Totally.
Because the investment world has completely changed. We have robo-investing now. The second there's a tiny variation in the market.
It's like AI.
Exactly. Yeah. These computers are calculating, and they're moving things before you even know what's happening.
Totally.
You cannot get ahead of this. But what you can do, the stock market if you're going to the stock market, you're making a bet.
Totally.
No matter what you put your money into, you're making a bet. And what you're betting on is that thing is going to be around in the future. Mm-hmm. So if you put your money into the Vanguard fund, I forgot what the ticker name of it, but it's the entire total stock market. So all you're betting on is that American businesses will exist in the future by the time I retire. That is all you're betting on.
Totally.
That seems like that's a pretty safe bet. There's going to be like American business
seemingly,
Yeah. And well, if not, we're in serious trouble, and the money you lost in the stock market is not going to be the problem you're worried about. You know what I mean?
I know.
No, money's not going to matter.
I could go like real conspiracy there too, but we'll let's not digress because I love going there. But, I don't need to scare everybody.
Yeah, I could go there with you. But really, what I wanted to say is that Tony Robbins is a great place to start. There's a lot of really good books out there.
What are your top 3?
Unshakable, his newest book, is a really synthesized version of a lot of his writing. So I feel like that's a really good one to start with.
What was his money book called again? I forget. So that they know.
I'm totally blanking on the name too. You know why? Because I have a child and I haven't slept in a really long time.
I have no excuse. None.
Why don't we put it in the show notes and we'll actually send you the answer so that people have these resources.
Below. Okay. Exactly.
So that's really my answer is to well, then I guess there's a second part. Start now.
Start now. Wherever. I don't care if you're working at Starbucks. Start now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. If you get a raise, live exactly the way that you're living and put that money towards it. The only thing that I will say is a better investment of your money is to invest it in yourself.
Agreed. I do agree. Self-care and stuff like that, but not to go overboard.
Well, what I meant with
I'm like
self-care
justifying all of mine.
Self-care is very important. What I meant was start a business.
Buy a house like that.
Exactly. If you have an inclination to start your own business, you can't control what's happening in the market, but you can control what's going on for you. And if you're like in alignment and you've done all the work that you offer and you've done your programs and you're expanded enough to be ready to see what's in front of you and the steps that you need to take, invest in yourself because you can make way more money off of investing in yourself.
For instance, if I had not gone like the route of hiring the team, right? Like I was just a one-man show working 14 hours a day, doing it way worse than, they're all skilled to be doing it now. We wouldn't be at all where we are. That is giving even the company the luxury of investing further in these homes. And, a couple of notes that I want to throw in there for people too. I don't know about you. Did you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I didn't, but you've mentioned that book.
I love that book. That was like when I was 19, I read it. But I think some really key things that I learned from that I don't think the modern person knows, or the modern consumer knows, is that don't go out and buy the fancy car. Don't go out and buy that shit until your investments are paying for them, meaning that you're getting a return off of, if you're in the stock market, low index funds, if you're getting a return off of your home because you're renting, let those things pay for those luxuries. Until then, like for me, I drove a Toyota Yaris forever until I got to the point where I can lease cars through the company for the write-off that I need. That it has to happen.
Sense. That's right.
Do it when it makes sense. Don't, I love that you were saying, live like you did before and put all of your, raise to. What would you suggest is the first start for the person's like, okay, I hear low index funds, but how do I even do that? Where do I, what website do I go to? What would you say?
Vanguard is phenomenal. If that is one thing I really would do is read about the history of Vanguard because it's very radical. Essentially, there's this conundrum with the market where these money managers and all these companies that were managing everyone's money, they are a company also. And so they have to do two things. And these two things that they have to do are in opposition to each other. One of the things they have to do is provide dividends and grow someone's money. But on the flip side of that, they have to make their business as profitable as possible. And so they're really trying to rip off that other hand in order to make their own business profitable.
Completely. That's why if you're going to get a financial advisor, go off of one that you do not pay. It's only percentage based off of what they make you.
I don't do. I'm like, do it yourself.
And I'm like the lazy one who has a financial advisor. Yeah.
Well, that's just two different ways of doing it,
It's because because I just am like a projector who's tired. But that's no excuse for the projector out there who's like, I don't even know if I can have one.
I'm very DIY. For anyone who's really DIY, Mr. Money Mustache's website is one of my favorites. I love that one.
Resource.
To me, he takes it to an extreme, but I'm sort of in between those two places. So, what the owner of Vanguard did is, and this is so radical, is he said, the people who are investing in Vanguard are also the owners of Vanguard. Mm-hmm. So there's no one ripping you off. It's all going back to you, no matter which way you do it. Exactly. And also the cost even of their financial advisors is extremely low. Mm-hmm. And now you're getting something which a friend of mine calls the Robin Hood effect, which is everything's going to $0 for everything. And here's another little tip for people who might not have a lot to start off with. Join Robinhood. It's an app that you can get online. They're about to launch a savings account and checking account with a 3% interest rate.
Whoa, that's huge. Because what do you get? Like a Bank of America's 1 point something, right? Or if even that,
yes.
Right?
And then if you make one mistake and you don't follow the rules, you will get the entire year's amount times 10 taken away from you.
$30 because you are like negative in your account. Yeah.
Which is like, again, 10 times what you earned in interest for the year.
Totally.
And it's so the new Robinhood savings and checking accounts, they haven't come out yet, but they're coming out, and it's going to have a debit card, and it's going to be, just the same as a checking and savings account.
You're taking the power out of the man for now.
That's right.
Until it turns in cells.
I guess
into something bigger.
Robinhood is sort of the man, but they're doing things very differently. And I feel like, their whole thing is really is equalizing the playing field for people, because you can invest in you could buy one stock. You could, and just watch that one stock grow.
Totally. I love that.
Can I give people one more tip?
I have more to give too. I'm like racking my brain right now when I was just getting into it. I love this.
Here's another tip. When the stock market starts going down, and people will say crashing, or we go into a recession, instead of getting scared, this is the number one tip I can give you. I want you to really reframe this. The stock market is on sale.
Dude, just like the housing market.
Right. It is on sale. Everything's on sale.
Yes.
And so if there's some dress that you wanted to buy or whatever it is, and then you've been like, I shouldn't spend my money on that, but then you go there and it's 50% off.
Dude, you would buy it, right?
You buy it, right?
Yeah.
So that is the time. Be so happy.
That's how stockbrokers roll. That's their whole, that's what they do. That's their job.
Exactly.
Is to look for things on sale and buy them when they're down.
Right.
Even like Lila too, I'm like, go buy a house in Joshua Tree right now. Or like now's the top of the market, but it's the same concept. When something's low, buy. That's the time to buy.
Exactly. And I would argue, like just what you were saying, that but you have to be educated about what that means, because some things can look like they're on sale, but they're actually plummeting down to the clearance section and then gone.
Yeah, like they're not in style anymore.
That's right. Exactly.
They're actually folding.
It doesn't matter if it's 50% off. It's not cute.
They're clearing the house because someone else is going to buy that.
That's right. So like with that example with Joshua Tree, I really think that's going to be the next Palm Springs.
Dude, do it now.
It's still time.
It's still time when you look, even at the top of the market. I'm also the person in LA, if you're looking to buy, please stop looking in hip areas, and please go to, what's it called? I love it so much, to the new Venice. I think it's, and I'm late on this one. I've been saying this for years, but right below Venice, what's the spot called?
I don't know.
What's it called? No, that's like going in, but below it, like closer to south, down. It's sort of considered sort of like the South Central region. It starts with an I think. I'm forgetting the name. I don't know why I'm blanking on everything today. My brain's not working, but that's the place I'm always like, Max, stop renting in Boyle Heights, your studio space, go buy. And he's like, everything happens downtown, Lacy, to make clothes. Why would I buy there? I'm like, because you're going to own, whatever.
Yeah, and it gets complicated, because the truth is when we're doing that, we are displacing people, and that's the reality of the situation. And
Absolutely.
It's very complicated with real estate. And I think that for me, you and I have had this conversation. For me, that's the piece that gets complicated for me around that. And
just like everything, like being somebody who's contributing to waste,
100%.
And it's like all of us, like in a way to provide consumerism or be a consumer, you know.
That is the reality of the situation.
It totally is.
Yep.
It totally is. And I grew up firsthand witnessing that with a single mom, who was a waitress. Like I got to see that and all of that. And it's the double-edged sword, man.
It is. But I think part of it is, this is my own view, of course. What happens if that's the only place you can afford and you do buy a house there? How do you show up in that community? How do you contribute to that community?
Yeah. And how do you give, like, I love this. The landlord that I used to rent from in Echo Park for years, my little 300 square foot apartment, she was the oldest hippie of all time, like lived on a commune, all the things. And she in fact only bought her house in Echo Park, I think it was in the 80s, because she was going through a divorce, and the lawyer told her, you'll look like a far more stable parent, because her stance was nobody should own land. I mean, like really, really OG and considerate. And it's just a part of her, you know, as a Jewish woman, she's a mensch that she always rents that place for $350 a month.
That's
so
powerful.
it's like, how can you show up in the community?
Yeah.
How can you be a leader? And that's really cool and beautiful.
I love that example. Thank you.
Absolutely. Even like with the company, you know, we're still reconciling the loss we've taken after going to the subscription route of offering all of our workshops for $24.99. And, you know, there has to be a win-win for everybody so that something can sustain. But yeah, how can you show up? How can you scale and show up? And
yeah,
I love that. What are some other little tips too that I just want to impart? Because people ask about this stuff all the time. Do not leave money in a low interest savings account.
No,
Number one.
It's a complete waste.
That's
one of the things that I love about that Mr. Money Mustache always says is his basic theory is all of your dollars are your workers. They're all working for you.
So true.
And so how do you have them working? Are they working in an efficient way? Have you set it up so there's a bunch of lazy workers, which means that they're just sitting in a savings account where they're not accruing any interest?
Exactly.
All of your money has to be working for you. You know, one thing I noticed at the shop is that a lot of people will come in and they'll be like, just keep the change. It's like, you know, whatever it is, 80 cents, 75 cents, 10 cents. And I'm just looking at them like, that's money.
That's working for you.
Yeah, you just left that here.
Yeah.
And we actually keep it in a little dish. And if someone else doesn't have change, then we give them it. So we have taken their money and repurposed it in a way that makes sense. But
it's an energetic interest.
Exactly. Yeah. But they don't know that. And I just think that is completely crazy. Totally. Here's another one that I really like. I think it's an app called Acorns.
Oh yeah, that helps you can move money around, right?
Well, so say you go in and you buy a coffee and it's $3.50. It rounds it up to $4 and that 50 cents gets invested. I definitely encourage people to look into the company because you have to make an initial investment into Acorns in order for it to make sense because they charge you $1 a month. So if you're putting like a small amount of change in every month and then you're losing like a certain amount of the fee, it's ending up costing you more.
Yeah.
But if you put in an initial investment, then it makes a lot of sense to round it up that way. It's a really nice way to invest.
I also think too, I don't think enough people take advantage of the credit card offerings that are out there.
Absolutely.
If you're in a financial space to be like, for me, for instance, I still have to bank with Bank of America for a couple of reasons that are annoying, but just because it's such a hassle to move a lot of things, a lot of moving parts right now. But even like their cash rewards, it's not for the person who, is debt prone or doesn't have enough resources to pay for the credit card. But if you're somebody who's making a salary that, you can live off of comfortably and it's not paycheck to paycheck, I buy everything on those and pay them off that week. And then now I accrue all of this extra money. They give me free money. Like I think last week I redeemed $87. That now goes into a savings account that will move right into investment. So it's taking advantage of those rewards as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to speak on that and say that that's how I've grown the business.
Oh, tell us about that.
Every year around the holidays, that's our busiest time. Most retail businesses, and even though it is an apothecary, it's retail. And so every year we make almost our entire financial picture in this 2-month period. And that's what sustains us and makes us able to buy all of the herbs that we need because we're making fresh herb, we only have one time of the year when it's flowering or when the root's ready. Yeah. We have to buy a year's worth of that plant at one time. Yeah. And so the holiday money is what provides us with the income for that. And also to purchase all the alcohol that we need to make our tinctures. Yeah. So every year I need to bring on additional things during the holidays that my customers are going to enjoy. So every year I would get 18 or 20 month no interest credit card. And I would put all the holiday purchases on there and I would start and get that in about September. And then I'd start putting all the holiday purchases on there. And then after the holidays, because I made the money off of the things that I was able to buy, then I paid off that credit card.
Done. That's so brilliant. See, and that's like taking out a small business loan with no hassle, and you'll actually be approved.
That's right. That's right. Hopefully. I mean, there's a lot of factors involved, but there's a lot of really great credit card offers out there. And I would say my favorite is really Capital One. I think that they really help people out, and they give credit cards to people who might not be able to get a card in other places.
Absolutely. Or if you're somebody like me who ran yourself, I personally didn't do it, but my mom had to file bankruptcy at one point. You know, she's kind of a mess and goes through a lot. And so I was like the enabling, you know, non-Al-Anon at the time daughter who co-signed for a BMW that she wanted just using my credit. I didn't pay for anything. This was back when I was like a waitress at the Laugh Factory. And she ended up having 37 late payments. So when I went to go buy a car, I couldn't.
Yes.
When I went to go do anything, I couldn't at that time. And I was just then, it was when I was a preschool teacher. And what I was doing was factoring all of the education I had put together about investing, about money in general, because I've been teaching myself since I was 19, because I was always like, I know that one day I want passive income. So if I'm a mother, I don't have to do anything.
That's right.
And at that time, I was a preschool teacher and I was making $4,000 a month. You know, I wasn't even netting that. I was grossing that. And at that time, I was like the most money I was ever making because I'd been a waitress before that, you know, at places I wasn't making that. So I was like, I'm paying off all my debt this year and I'm going to go and like get my credit cards, work up my credit. And when I went to get a credit card, I couldn't. So for the person who's in that position, I highly, highly recommend what I did was I just went out and got a prepaid card from, at the time I was banking with Bank of America. And I just lived off of it. I put everything on it, paid it off right away, and I built it. I think I built my credit back up under a year, you know, and I worked really hard for that. So for the person who's in a position where your mom fucked you over or you just did.
Or a partner, or people
anything.
Get into a lot of situations.
Or you were in a really tough situation that you couldn't pay off. And we all go through like different versions of that. So that's a great resource. And I felt like I had one other tip that I wanted to give because I think this is really helpful for people.
And I also think that it's really helpful for people to hear where you and I started from, because we both started working like what people consider like low-wage service positions. Oh,
my first job at 15, because my parents said, I won't pay for your gas or do anything. You have to support yourself entirely. I was a housekeeper and I worked at I was a gas station attendant.
I worked at a shoe store. I totally understand.
That's way more glamorous.
I really get it. No, because I mean, I started working for my dad when I was very young, like maybe 13 or 14, just helping there. And I am so glad that I did, because it built up my work ethic. And then I just kept moving from job to job, building more skills.
Yeah, same. And every job was important. I learned a skill from every single job.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was just about to say, is that whatever job your listeners are in right now, it's really hard when you're in that job in the moment to understand why you're in that job.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now that I've been running my company for 6 years, every single thing that I did in the past has all been little tiny steps leading me to this moment. And
accumulated to give like me some sort of empowerment in what I do now, even though I'm still having to learn skills and things like that.
Absolutely.
But absolutely. That's huge. That was going to lead to one other thing I was going to tell. The biggest thing I want to say to people who are starting to learn about finances, because I think this is something that finances should be taught in school.
100%.
This is so important to empower. Everybody's so disempowered. And I think it's designed that way to keep people down.
100%.
And I think that about a lot of things. But know your values and goals. And I always reference, this book. It's called like Smart Women Finish Rich. It was one of the very first digestible finance books that I read. But if you know the 3 core values of what you actually want in life, even if it's not specific, like you don't know what your path is or your purpose. When I was reading this book, I was a waitress, and I thought I wanted to be an actress and stuff. I had no idea, but I knew one day if I ever had a little bit of money, I was going to make it fucking work for me. And my 3 core values were always freedom, number 1 at the top, always, meaning passive income paying for me, investments paying for my lifestyle, so I can be as free as I want and do whatever I want, never be in jail. That's what I call it, having to be stuck in something. The second was travel, third was family. And so
I have the same 3 as
Are those your 3s?
See, so
I know the Libra Aquarius is like, oh my gosh. And they've never changed, not once. Yeah. And every single decision I make, whether it's through the company, whether it's through my personal life, they always line up with those 3 values. Am I on track to be completely free, travel whenever I want, how I want with freedom, and be a mother? And I remember back when I was teaching preschool, because before that, I never thought I wanted to have kids. And it was through being a preschool teacher that I was like, oh, whoa, I'm supposed to do this. I need to start setting up a life like right now stack that's going to allow me to be a present stay-at-home mom if I want, where I'm supporting myself financially. And so that's what's led me to make a lot. It led me to even start a blog. It led me to start down this road that I was being pointed. The last thing that I want to say about people who are out there and you're like, I'll never own a house. I don't know, things are too expensive. I just want to say that used to be me forever. I would wish upon owning a house and owning homes. And a huge tip that I think is really important if you come from like I do, like a single broke mom and young parents and a lot of lack mentality that you've had to work through or work out of, buy a really fucking rad house in a really cheap area. Then everyone, like we keep getting comments on IG when we show the house that it's like, can we just ask how much this costs? Like we're thinking it's like millions of dollars. I'll be like really candid. I went back home to buy a house there because I could get one for under $300,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And then guess what I get to do? I actually get to use my money to make it exactly what I want it to be. You know what I mean? And it'll be paid off in 2 years.
Yep.
Now it's just passive income through the company.
Yep.
So just if listen to that, like if you're in LA, if you're in New York, you're in San Francisco, or go to the areas, manifest the great deal, but buy a cheap house and make it as dreamy as you want it to be. That's a huge tip when you're first starting out.
Definitely. And I would even say if I could go back and do things a little bit differently, now that I have more education around this, the first thing that I would actually save up a down payment for is for an apartment building.
I know that was always going to be my track. I was going to do the duplex or the fourplex, but having had a friend, and I do still highly encourage this, and especially if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's like the number one track they put you on is real estate to make it passive. Yeah. And so I always told Max, I was like, when I get to the point of being able to, and also to tell people this is really important that the house is bought through the company. So that's absolutely a really important thing. It's not like a personal situation. That I was always like, I'm going to do the fourplexes and I'm going to, have that add up, and be a great landlord. And when the time came, I have a friend who I've had forever. He was a huge expander for me. His name is Lach Rana, that he and his brother were so smart. They did their undergrad in business at UCLA and then USC, and they were on the like huge corporate track. And he used to say that he woke up every morning, sat on his bed, cried while he was tying his tie. It was horrific for him. He's like
brutal.
So brutal.
That is brutal.
And he and his brother educated themselves. They're Sikh, and they transplanted here when they were, I think, 5. His father died, and they came over from India. And he and his brother were like, we're going to go and buy a shit ton of real estate in Los Angeles and have passive income. And they did. I think they own like 10 units. But I did get to see firsthand what goes into being a landlord. It's a fucking full-time job with property manager.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that's why I said that first is because you can live in the apartment and then the other tenants are paying for for the mortgage and for all the utilities. And so that's taking a huge chunk of money off of your plate. And then you're able to use whatever you would normally be spending on that to invest.
And to invest in your next spot.
The hard part, and this is the part that I feel like most people get stuck on, is qualifying for a loan.
Huge.
And also coming up with the initial down payment. That's the hard part.
That's the hard part, yeah.
But the truth is, like, I do really believe this, that if you hustle hard enough and long enough, you can accumulate that.
And I believe you can manifest it.
I believe that too.
Other couple of resources to look into too for the person who maybe real estate isn't resonating with, because I felt really guilty when we were buying this Yosemite house first that I actually had a very hard time that I had to DRE, that I'm like, I'm not being smart. I'm not, going the route of rentals, because it is such a smart move. Real estate, oh my God, especially if you're like hearing all of this financial talk, sounds overwhelming about investing. If you can just go the real estate track alone is brilliant. And so I had a really hard time with that. You want to know who my expander is? He's probably going to be pissed that I'm going to talk about this, but Max is so smart. This fucking Virgo is so smart. Last year, and I was afraid, so I didn't do it, but he was like, I'm going to buy some laundry mats. And he fucking bought 2 laundry mats, because then you don't have to rely fully on your passion being your source of income.
Yeah.
And it is so smart if you're a creative. go to parking lots, laundromats, car washes, and he did the laundromat route, and he's such a manifester that he thinks of it, he acts, he lives his design fully.
Yeah.
And I was too afraid. I'm like, I'm going to sit out and watch this one for you.
Yeah.
And he's doing fantastic that I'm going to invest in his next two that he's doing.
That's awesome.
If you're like, I don't know if I want to be a landlord, laundromats, parking lots in cities, and car washes.
It's also a really, really powerful way to own a business and then decide what kind of boss you want to be.
Oh my God. And what kind of community member you want to
Exactly.
be. Like Max hasn't changed a thing. He bought them in like a very, very non-integrated area yet, or non-gentrified area yet. And he doesn't want to change it. He doesn't want to make it like fancy. He doesn't want to make it hipster whatsoever. He doesn't want to be a part of, like you're saying, displacing. He actually shows up like every Saturday with coffee and donuts because he's not as healthy as I am. And I'm like, stop feeding people donuts, but whatever. They are so stoked. They love this business. They love it. And you do get to decide what kind of boss you want to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we leave it off on this?
Sure.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of this. I have to thank you, Nic. You were a massive expander on many fronts of this episode.
Thank you for having me, Lacy. It was really a pleasure to spend time with you.
You're welcome. And we wish you a great weekend to everybody listening. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.